Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is an announcement video for Book Trek 2024. So, Book Trek is probably one of the nerdiest reading events on BookTube. It is essentially dedicated to reading Star Trek fiction. And this year, we are repeating what we did last year. I think this is the fourth year that Book Trek has been going on. It's been pretty much different every year, except this year, like I just said, we are repeating last year. And last year, what we did was Summer of Trek, 3 months of reading Star Trek fiction. So we are calling this year Wrath of the Summer of Trek. Now, it's essentially what I just said. Reading Star Trek fiction. Now, if you've never read Star Trek fiction before, but you are a Star Trek fan, I encourage you to give it a try. It is not going to be the overwhelming majority are not going to be great literature, but they can be great fun. I first started reading Star Trek fiction. It was some years ago. I had a friend who was a big Star Wars fan, and he had been telling me how he had been recently reading Star Wars fiction and how much he had been enjoying it. And I had that kind of going through my head the next time I was at a library book sale, and I came across some Star Trek books, and I decided, with what he said in mind, I could pay a quarter, 50 cents, whatever it cost, and give it a try. And it was a lot of fun. This is at a time when there was no new Star Trek on television or the movie theater. It was one of those dead areas after Star Trek Enterprise had finished and nothing new was coming out. So I was missing the old TNG crew, which is my preferred, or I would say my favorite iteration of Star Trek, although I loved most of them. And, it was a very simple book. I don't remember exactly which one it was at this point, but I enjoyed it. It was nice to revisit those old characters and see another adventure, and it basically set me on a tradition. It became a ritual of sorts. I am somebody, I teach, and I enjoy Star Trek fiction every summer. It's sort of my version of a, light beach read. So when the school year ends and summer begins, I like to begin reading Star Trek fiction, just as a way to celebrate and to relax. So this year, for Book Trek, we are repeating again what we did last year. So last year it was June, July, and August. And if you want to participate, the main mission of Book Trek is to very simply pick up a piece of Star Trek fiction and read it. That's it. If you read one during that 3-month period, you've accomplished the main mission. We do have two other optional missions. The optional missions these are away missions. The first one is to read nonfiction science. So in the tradition of Star Trek, in which, when Star Trek is at its best, we see them trying to use science to solve their problems. And the overall message of Star Trek is that science will make the future better, that our moral, ethical sense and responsibility will evolve with technology. We will not destroy ourselves. I think that the only way to accomplish something like that is to become scientifically literate. So I encourage people during the Summer of Trek, Book Trek event, to do an away mission. Pick up something that is nonfiction science. Maybe it's something about the universe, something about astronomy or astrophysics. Maybe it's something about biology and nature. Really, whatever it is, nonfiction science, that is one of the away missions. The other away mission is just to read things that are related to or inspired by Trek. This can be production history. It can be books written by people who were in Star Trek. It can be parodies, satire, things that really clearly would not have existed if it weren't for Trek. So that's the second optional away mission. Again, both are optional. You don't have to do them. They're just excuses to read those sorts of things during the summer. The main mission is to read Star Trek fiction. Now, I've got a great group of co-hosts, a good bridge crew going along with me on this, and you'll be seeing their announcement videos also coming out in the very near future. We've got Steve Donahue, who's been around since the very beginning. Book Trek actually began it came from a conversation that I had with him. We had been talking it was during my first year on BookTube, and somehow Star Trek fiction came up, and we were both fans of Star Trek fiction, and the idea of a reading event came up, and then I just kind of ran with it. But it began basically with a conversation with Steve Donahue. So he's been an original crew member. We've also got Brandy from the Booklectic. So last year she wasn't able to make a lot of videos. She had some, she kind of had a natural disaster happen in her town that took her from her being able to film, but she was still reading during that time. We've got Fred by Read by Fred, who's been with us for a few years. Gareth from Book Songs and Other Magic, who I think has been with us maybe for 2 years. And we've got Michael K. Vaughan, who has also been around since the very beginning. And we've got a new crew member, and that is Randy Ray, the Literate Texan. And I will leave all of their information down below. We all are Star Trek fans. We sometimes disagree on what the best maybe iteration of Star Trek is, or we're all pretty much in agreement, I would say, actually, of the really good Star Trek. We don't always agree with what constitutes bad Star Trek. So we've been having some lively discussions leading up to this announcement of the event that have been a lot of fun. Now, before I sort of sign off, I know that one of the things I usually get inside the comments when I announce these is recommendations. So I'm just going to show a couple, I got a stack here right next to the camera, of some of my, I wouldn't say the best Star Trek, I don't know if I'd classify them that way, but ones that I really like, personal favorites that maybe you'll enjoy them too. So I'm not going to go into detail about these, I'm just going to kind of show them and briefly discuss them. So one that I would recommend is, if you're an original series fan, we've got Star Trek Prime Directive. This is by Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens. They've done a lot of writing with William Shatner, but when they're on, they're on. They actually have some really good books. And this one I liked quite a bit. This is essentially Kirk is accused of violating the Prime Directive, and he basically loses his command. And there's a mystery involved about what actually happened, and the crew are basically trying to get to the bottom of it. But this was a nice, really good book. I like this one. We also have a book like this, Star Trek Federation, by the same co-authors. And this, you can see, deals with Kirk. It also deals with Picard. So we have 2 timelines going on, but there's actually a third, because it bounces between them and also Zefram Cochrane, who was the one that came up with warp drive, at least on Earth. And so we're seeing him, and he predates both of them. And this does bring up a point about Star Trek fiction. Star Trek fiction is not canon. So, especially if you're reading something older, this is, at this point, older, you might read something that later episodes or movies nullified or contradict. But go into these with light expectations, just have fun with it, and I think you will eventually have a good time. But this one I would also recommend. It's very well done. Now I've got some TNG. I'm going to show one of my personal favorites. Again, I'm not saying it's the best, but it's one that I champion. And that is this one. We've got, the glare, Star Trek Next Generation Kahless. This is by Michael Jan Friedman. This is about the ramifications of one of the things that happened in TNG. We have a clone of Kahless, this kind of legendary / religious hero among the Klingons. And this deals with basically history versus legend. When history becomes legend, and legend becomes more important than history, what happens when you start learning the real history, and the people in power want to keep the legend? So I really enjoyed this one quite a bit. It's not perfect, but I think there's some really interesting things that Michael Jan Friedman is doing in here. Another popular author for the Next Generation is Peter David. He does a really good job finding the voices of characters. He does have kind of a bad habit sometimes of throwing in certain slang that I don't think would fit, but he definitely knows his lore, and he does a really good job. So this one was a lot of fun. This is Q Squared. This essentially posits that Trelane from the original series was a Q, and I think he's basically the godson of Q. And he starts wreaking havoc on things and changing basically reality, almost changing the timeline, and the crew of TNG has to fix it. I read this many years ago, but I remember having a lot of fun with this one. Another one that's pretty good by Peter David is this one, Imzadi. So this is what happened. This is what if Deanna Troi is killed, and then years later, an older Riker has the opportunity to go back in time and stop her death. So yeah, it's kind of a love story / time travel. This was a lot of fun. And for newer Trek, now I personally am not a big fan of Discovery, so I have not read any Discovery books. One of the things that I have read, though, is some Picard. So the first season of Picard for me was okay. Second season really dropped the ball, but third season was great. But I have read 2 Picard books so far, and I like them both. So this is the first Picard book, The Last Best Hope. I thought this was really well done. It's essentially what drew Picard to resign from Starfleet and how things went wrong. And a lot of this is about how bureaucracy can affect things, can ruin things, can override science even when bureaucratic interests are at play. So this was kind of a good prequel to the world of Picard. And another prequel that I just thought was really good was this one, The Dark Veil. So this deals with Captain Riker on the Titan. Again, this is before the first season of Picard, but basically showing what was going on there and things involving synthetics. But again, a really good Titan novel, the USS Titan. So those are just some recommendations I'm going to throw out there in case people are interested, they want to join, maybe they can find something on an e-reader and want to give it a shot. I would recommend all those, not equally, but they're all ones that I personally really like. And that is it. That is my announcement for Book Trek 2024, Wrath of Summer of Trek. It is going to kick off in about a month, so the beginning of June. Now, as I said before, I treat Star Trek fiction as a summer read for summer vacation when school is done. So I will be starting to make videos at the end of June. My co-hosts, some of them are going to be making videos right at the very beginning of June. Steve Donahue, he reads pretty much a Star Trek book a day and makes a video a day. I'll certainly make a few a month, but not nearly at his rate. All of our co-hosts, we all kind of read at different rates and different times, and we have other obligations. So we're going to be coming out with things at different rates. So by the end of June, I'll start posting videos and reading. If you want to join us, please do. We'll use the hashtag BookTrek2024. And if you're a content creator and you want to make videos, please tag us in them so we can find them. And we'd love to hear what you think of Star Trek fiction. If you're finding any great things, we of course would love to hear about it. Now again, this is certainly a kind of niche, very nerdy type of event. It's not going to have mass appeal, but we always have some really fun participants throughout the summer. I fully expect to get tens of views on my videos, but anything that I get is going to be appreciated because it's all in good fun. And myself and my bridge crew co-hosts, we all just love Star Trek and like to talk about it. So that's it. If you've read any Star Trek before and you have recommendations to put inside the comments, love to know about it. If you plan on joining, I'd love to hear that as well, especially if you know what you want to read. But otherwise, you got about a month to figure it out. We'll be kicking things off in June. Hope you can join us, and as always, thank you, BookTube.